Welcome back to the show, everyone. This week, I am joined by my friend Tim Corey. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's a little cold here in Texas. It's almost 60, so it's a little rough right now, but I'm okay.
Well, you get yourself warmed up by the barbecue pit, right?
Pretty much.
That's how you stay warm. Well, Tim, I'm really happy to have you here today. And for some weird reason, if someone out there has never heard of you, can you give us kind of the spiel of who Tim Corey is and what you're currently working on?
Sure. I am Tim Corey, and you can find me everywhere under I am Tim Corey. I'm on YouTube is primarily is where I'm at. I've been a developer for 25 plus years or so, and what I really found out was I learned the hard way, and so my goal is to help people learn the easy way, and so that's why I create free training resources for people to learn software development the easy way. I also have some paid courses too, but primarily my goal is just help people.
I know you do a lot of different things. What's kind of the breakup of your income right now?
So right now, my training courses, primarily on C sharp, are the thing that pay the bills, and that's one of the things that I have really told my audience is, hey, I will do paid courses, and then that will fund more free content, and so that's where most of my income comes from is from paid courses.
And do you still do consulting and such on the side as well?
I do not. I've actually started contracting with a friend of mine to kind of take that off of my plate because I just don't have time. I focus everything on training resources.
That is really good to hear. Well, let's go back a little bit because you haven't always been the YouTube course guy. I think at one moment you had a real job. At least that's what you told me.
I've had a few real jobs, yes. Yep.
So let's talk about the real job for a little bit because I believe while you were doing the real job, you also started doing some consulting and freelancing on the side. Talk a little bit about why the need to do all this extra work on top of your day job.
I was broke. That's that's step
It is.
one.
Yeah.
And that really is the thing. I mean, I started off as just a software development consultant. I worked for a company that was a consulting company. Really more of a contractor company than a consulting company, but we did kind of both. And, I started off there, but then I moved to another job where I was an IT director and it didn't pay real great, but I really enjoyed the experience and enjoyed the job. But I decided I really needed to have something outside of my day job that helped supplement my income, but at the same time also kind of scratch the itch that I had. I'm a software developer, and I was doing an IT director's position, which isn't really heavy into software development. So this allowed me to kind of keep active because if you step away from software development for 6 months, a year, 2 years, you're really behind. And so I got to experience, the new stuff and try new things out and experiment with different languages and things like that as a consultant. So it kind of kept my skills fresh, which helped me move then away from that job into more software development, but it also supplemented my income and kind of gave me that cushion to do other things as well.
Did you find the side work was starting to build up more and more, and eventually you said, "I don't need the day job anymore," and got rid of it?
So no, I never let it get that far. So I always try to keep it as just a side job. And one of the things that was a big for me was that work-life balance. And so I really tried hard. When I was heavily into consulting while working a day job, I had two young kids and I really didn't want to be like the never at home dad, that you might see once in a while. And so I really focused hard on being there for my kids, being there for my wife, being present, which meant I was doing a lot of, late hours, night work and that kind of thing. So I didn't go too far in the, take every job I could. I tried to, limit it to, hey, what jobs can I do in the off hours, in the time when I have available to me. So I didn't really let that build up until I lost my job. And then I spent a year doing just software consultancy, which, having all of that kind of previous build up and experience and working with people and building contacts really helped with that year on my own.
So you could say your consulting was insurance. against losing your job, which obviously happened, and you didn't have to worry about going off and getting that next job.
It definitely was. It was, yeah, it provided it's kind of really good insurance because, you think about insurance, like house insurance, did pay for it, and there's that bill. And this case, the insurance actually paid me. So
Yeah.
having that second stream of income was really, really helpful to um, provide with the bills, extra bills, and the water pump goes out, no problem. I've got a cache of money to take care of that, and car breaks down, same thing. But then when I lose my job, well, I can just step right into doing more of it and be okay. And that was one of the most liberating feelings, was not feeling panic when I didn't have a job.
I
Was
think I
I get a
was wanna
choice.
touch on that. I've lost my job before. I remember my first it's different levels of grief, right? Yeah, first I was just like denial, like, "I didn't just lose my job. I can't believe this is happening." And then you have acceptance and, I didn't know what to do with myself last time I lost my job, and I imagine it's so freeing to just know go, "Oh, well, I have more time to do this other stuff now," and you're just not worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always gonna be that back of your mind worry a little bit, but it was excellent. I mean, I actually the right before I lost my job, or actually right after I lost my job, I was scheduled to fly out to Spain to go to a conference. And so I remember being in the airport, just making phone calls, be like, okay, you know, hey, I'm gonna go full time with consultancy, ramp up the jobs. And so
Yeah,
I started calling contacts. And when I came back from Spain, I had a whole bunch of new work to start on. So it was, yeah, there's always that what's gonna happen, that unknown. But at the same time, it was not nearly as scary as it really could have been because I had that insurance.
that's fantastic. How long did you just do the consulting? Did you, go off to try to find another job? What happened next?
So I used it as kind of that fallback buffer. Let's see what happens. And I always loved consulting, and helping people out, and so I felt like, hey, I could maybe just do this on my own forever. But the more I spent time doing it, the more I realized there was this. For me, it didn't work real well. For me, I didn't like the constant push and pull.
Yeah,
You're the salesperson, you're the marketing person, you're the accountant, and all the rest. And so I really loved software development and helping people, and those two things were what wanted to do. And that I did do those things, but in smaller quantities than I was expecting or wanting. So that was part of it, but then the other part of it was I was spending an awful lot of time again trying to build this business up and do everything, and that took a lot of time away from my family. And so I ended up making a choice just a year into it, saying, "You know what? This is not the way I want to be full-time independent." So I picked out a job that was work from home remote, 40 hours a week. And actually my boss, I love my boss, my former boss, but he said, "We insist on 40 hours, no more." And so that's that job. I'm like, "Yep, that's the job I want. I'm gonna go ahead and take that," because it's basically a 40-hour consultancy at
yeah,
that point, where I get to work from home. I get to set my own hours if I wanted to. Um, great, great opportunity, but I got to choose and didn't have to panic. So I
yeah.
spent time and said, okay, I looked at some jobs and kind of laughed and was like, no, I am not taking that job. There was one job that I interviewed for where they said, for a number of hours, we work pretty hard around here. I'm like, well, that's a big red flag right
Yeah.
there. Number of days off per year. Well, after a year, you get a week. And I'm like, no, that's not work-life balance. That's just insane.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of leverage that on my own consultancy to say, you know what, I can keep doing this thing if I want to, as long as I want to. And so I could turn down jobs that would be otherwise good paying jobs, but not the best opportunity, in order to find the job that I wanted. And then went back into working full time from there. And then, from there is when I started doing YouTube full time. And that was a whole nother story.
I believe you had mentioned that you had started teaching somewhere in between. How did that fall in?
So when I was, I've always done side work, and I was working for a company. I was a software developer, and I was doing some consulting on the side. But an opportunity came up where they said, "Hey, we need an adjunct professor to teach nights for C sharp." And I'm like, "Sure, I'll do that once a week."
Yeah.
So I jumped in and started teaching C sharp to college students for 5 years or so, twice a year, and loved it. I absolutely loved being in the classroom. I loved, seeing the light come on. I had students who came to me who were, multiple time failures in this class from previous professors, and were able to, graduate the class with high marks because it was the ability to see where they were and help them develop and spend that time. And I had the time, so I was able to, see a lot of really fun things come out of that. And that's where I really realized this is what I like. You know, I I enjoy helping people. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy this part of software development. And so, even when I was consulting, I'm like, I'm only doing a little part of what I really love. I want to get back to the bigger part of what I really love. So,
Did the teaching become before the YouTube, or did you start YouTube before and start teaching afterwards?
so the teaching led to the YouTube.
Okay.
So what happened was I was teaching once a week on Wednesday nights, usually, for 3 hours. So 16 times a semester, you would come to my class, get 3 hours of a fire hose of C sharp development, and then leave for a week and forget everything, and then come back and try to remember everything to go on to the next week. And that's not really a great way to learn C sharp.
Yeah.
So what I started doing was creating these horrible, awful, please don't look for them. I'm embarrassed they're even anywhere near the internet still. Videos where I said, okay, this is for CIS 163-101, what we learned this week. And I would just cover the topics we learned that week and kind of give them a refresher they can go back to and, hear what I said before and see what I did on the board or, on the video. And so that kind of gave my students a refresher, which was, I'd get 5, 10 hits a week, which I was not expecting to build an audience here. I was just trying to help my students. And then I started getting 50 hits and 100 hits and 500 hits and 1,000 hits. And I'm like, I don't have 1,000 students. And either I have some students who are really being diligent about going back and watching it over and over again, trying to learn by osmosis, like, loop,
Yeah.
or maybe I'm helping other people. And that's when the comments started rolling in. Hey, this was helpful. Can you help me in this? And so I just started creating videos to help people in a more broad sense. And that's where YouTube started. I never had a purpose for it other than to help people. I never, even monetization was like this way out there thought. I never even thought I could monetize. And so that first $100 check from YouTube came. It was a big deal.
So would you say nowadays YouTube is core to your income profile?
Um, in one way, yes. Another way, absolutely not.
Okay.
So in the way that's where people find me, and that's where people learn how I teach and what I teach and want more of what I teach. Absolutely. And that's what drives them to my website and to my courses and getting more. I don't really have marketing. I don't really do marketing.
Mhm.
I'm more of just, hey, I'm here, and if you want this, it's there. But as far as YouTube actually making me money, I actually had this conversation with someone who was pretty sure that I did a video just for the clicks,
Yeah.
and which I don't do. I am vehemently opposed to clickbait to the point where I'd probably kill my own YouTube numbers just because I don't want to be clickbaity or
Yeah.
close to it. But the thought was, well, you're just trying to make that sweet, sweet YouTube ad revenue, which so I have almost 600 videos on YouTube, and I had consistently in the millions of views per month or per quarter. I think it's
Mhm.
per month now. I don't remember. I don't really watch the numbers. But with all of that, my YouTube income is about $28,000 a year,
Okay.
which is not, I mean, I'm I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, 20
Yeah.
grand is 28 grand. It's a lot of money, but it's also not exactly, balling out, getting rich money.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not my primary income stream. And if I try to make it my primary income stream, I'm not going to do real well.
It's like a mid-level Toyota car payment.
Pretty
It's
much.
you're not getting the Ferrari or Lamborghini.
No,
You're getting
or you're
the
definitely not paying
Prius.
for rent. So
Yeah. And so it's not insubstantial, but it's also taking you a long time producing content to even get up to that level. Um,
that's definitely a snowball. Yes.
so I want to talk a little bit more about YouTube. Just you've been doing it, I think, before the term YouTuber was a thing. You said you've been on YouTube for close to 10 years now, right?
Yep. Yeah. I just
So
celebrated
for
your anniversary about 6 months ago, I think.
oh my gosh. So yeah, you've been in it for a while and you've kind of been with the platform as the platform has grown and it's turned into this huge thing. How often are you posting to YouTube now?
Right now, I do twice a week. So on Mondays, I have some sort of developer focused video, meaning usually code on the screen. So
Okay.
that's my Monday training videos. Thursdays, I actually have a podcast video. So it's a video, but it mainly is me talking.
Mhm.
It's talking head, and that is focused on the kind of the other half of software development. People don't really focus on as much. Software development isn't just writing code.
Yeah.
There's the all the things that go around that. Like, how do you work with a team? How do you what are the best practices you establish? How do you establish those? How do you work with a rough boss? What do you put in your portfolio? All those kind of questions that don't really involve code on a screen. Those are the questions I answer in my Dev Questions podcast. So that's twice a week, is typical. I'll do more once in a while when certain things pop up. I'm not a news station, but every once in a while, I'll talk about something that came out in developer news that is important, those type of things.
Generally, how much time are you spending building these videos? So if you're doing 2 a week, how many hours worth of time goes into those 2 videos?
It depends on the week, but a lot. I probably spend 10 to 15 hours a week just on my free content for that week's YouTube videos.
Do you try to build any sort of backlog so you're not pushing yourself every week to just get something out? Or is it pretty timely that the video that comes out on a Tuesday, say, was wrapped up Monday evening?
I am a natural procrastinator. Um, I'm bored as a procrastinator. So I I tend to be more timely, as in I'll be wrapping a video up on Friday for Monday.
Okay.
Um, Now that's because the Monday videos I fully produce. So I set everything up, I create the card, everything is all me. For Thursday videos, the dev question videos, actually, one of my employees does all the production work for it. There's some more
Okay.
complicated stuff. And so with that, I have to have those in early. Now, ideally, I'd be a month ahead. It doesn't happen. So I tend to do it. I tend to batch and try and do a lot, and then I can focus on other things that I want to focus on. Creating, creating courses is one. I try to block everything off. Like, you won't hear me respond to email. I'll be really bad about responding to email for probably a week
Mhm.
because I'm just heads down doing nothing but recording for a course. The same thing is true for the larger blocks of YouTube content. So, for example, I'm working on right now, we're working through a couple different like full courses that I want to produce for YouTube. So normally a course is a paid course. It goes just on imtimcorey.com.
Mhm.
But I really like to, again, help people, and I can't have everybody pay for stuff, and trying to figure out a way to make everybody make it available to everybody for paid is just too hard. So I talk to sponsors and I say, hey, would you sponsor making this a free course? And so we'll make it a free course. We'll make it a win-win-win for everybody. And so I'm working on those right now. So that's another area what's going to take additional time, but it'll give me a little bit of a buffer later. So it's just kind of a batch process. Some days are great, and some weeks I'm way ahead, and some weeks I'm just so far behind.
I know the feeling. I think right now, recording this episode with you, I'm a month ahead on podcasts, but I
Nice.
know that the moment I forget about that, I'm gonna have nothing because that month will just fly by
Well, and that
before.
month is December,
Yeah,
and December takes a lot of extra stuff away from you.
it sure does. How do you get some of your topic ideas? So if you're doing one code video and one kinda talking head video, where are those ideas coming from?
My audience.
Okay.
That's one of the things that, I've read a lot of business books and I've watched a lot of, business podcasts and business lectures and stuff like that. And one of the things that people often talk about is you have to figure out what your audience wants. You have to figure out what your audience really wants and figure out who your real audience is. And I've never had that problem because my audience tells me. And one of the things that when I started off on YouTube, one of my kind of focuses was I'm going to respond to every single comment. So if you make a comment, I will respond. Even if it's just, thanks, you're welcome. I'm going to try and respond to everything.
Mhm.
Now, I I ended that streak about 2 years ago, where I'm like, I just don't have time for every single one, especially when people are asking in depth, like, okay, if this happens and this happens, what about this? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to research that. I don't have time to research everything, but I still spend an awful lot of time talking to people, listening to people. And so I've been able to hear what they say, and hear the repeating patterns. But then I think it was 2 years ago, I built a suggestion site. It's actually one of the courses that's free on YouTube that MongoDB sponsored.
Mhm.
And so we put a course on YouTube that was me building a suggestion site. And then it's now live. And that's the site where you can go leave suggestions for me for future content. So
Hey.
suggestions.imtimcorey.com. And if any other creators out there want to steal from that, cool. Go through the list, figure out what people are asking for and build your own content. But there's a way to leave your own suggestion there, upvote other suggestions. And I try to go through that list a lot and say, okay, I'm going to answer those things. And you can't answer every question or respond to every request for a video, but I've got 700 different um, entries right now that I'm working through.
How would you respond to someone out there who says, I'm really interested in just putting content on YouTube, but the topics that I think I know I can talk about have already been done dozens of times.
I am not the best teacher. I am not the first teacher. I am not the um, every little nook and cranny teacher. There is no like, I am not the first or best of anything. And yet I've done okay. It really is a matter of just lend your voice to it. Figure out a way to scratch your own itch. When I started teaching, one of the things that really was a driving force behind how I teach
Mhm.
is I remember when I was a junior developer trying to learn, C sharp or trying to learn, in that case, it was VB 5 and 6. Um, I, I learned the hard way. I figured out all these wrong ways of doing things, and I even got some things to work that were just horrible. And looking back at your code now, you're like, I wish you'd never would have done that. But
Yesterday.
yeah, yesterday, it's always the case, right?
Yep.
But I learned the hard way, and I learned through the frustration and the wrong ways of doing things, and I remember that frustration. So that was the driving force behind how I teach is I remember that frustration. I don't want that for you. And so looking back at how I felt and where I was, how can I teach this in a way that would be revelatory? The idea that, it opens your eyes and it really becomes practical. One of the things that's always frustrated me is how to draw a horse. You got the
Yeah.
four stick lines and the little oval, and all of a sudden, next photo is like this photorealistic horse. And you're like,
Yeah.
I'm missing a step somewhere. And so I try to do that. I try to fill in those gaps. And be, thorough in my teaching. And so I just found that I'm solving my problem. This is my problem. This is what I struggled with. So I just solved that problem thinking that maybe there's others out there like me. And one of the things I found is that I'm not a unique person. I mean, maybe generally overall, sure, but the way I feel, others have felt too. And so by solving my problem in the way that worked well for me, there was others like me that also solved that problem for. And I am not like everyone. So there's other people out there who learn differently, who
Yeah.
want different things or have different perspectives on how learning should be. And so if you just teach to your voice, to teach to what works for me, it may be a smaller audience, maybe a bigger audience, but you'll find there's an audience of people who really resonate with how you do things. So just get out there and do it.
When I got started speaking, so we're probably talking 2007, 2008. I did one of my first talks I ever did was on getting started with jQuery back when we were doing jQuery for everything. And I remember doing this jQuery talk, and I had imposter syndrome out both ears. I didn't feel like I should have been up there talking about it, but I did this talk. It was introduction to jQuery, and I will never forget. Someone came up afterwards and went, "I have sat through I don't know how many sessions on jQuery, and you explained it in a way that totally made sense to me. I can go back and run with that now." So
Excellent.
it's like so many smarter people than me have done that sort of content, and this guy couldn't understand it. But little old me went up and did exactly what you just said, talked about it from my perspective, the issues I ran into, how I overcame those issues. This guy was able to go, I see what Kevin's talking about. Okay, I can move on from here. So the, I got him over that, 10% hump of just
Yep.
understanding what you need to know to get started. And then it's all up from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that light bulb moment is awesome
Yeah.
as a content creator. To be able to say I had an impact on somebody else's life just by sharing my experience is really cool.
And pro tip to anyone out there listening, if there is a course that you love, if there's a YouTube video you've gotten something out of, if there's a speaker at a conference you've gotten something out of, like if you take 5 seconds to just tell that person that you got something from whatever material they did, that person will have a high for the next 2 weeks. Like that is the best feeling in the world.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm really thankful for my audience. But it's one of the things that we've worked on is that, I don't personally, I don't really care.
Yeah.
If you're going to be like mean and miserable, fine, whatever. I don't know you. Who cares? But that is something that really affects others too. And so being able to come out there and say, this helped me really helps build people up. It really helps encourage them to do more of because if you're out there looking for something and you're finding resources, who created those? Somebody invested the time. So give them those kudos. And a lot of people will either be silent or will be negative if they didn't like something.
Yeah.
Be just as positive. I encouraged someone the other day, they were, I think their comment was C# is trash. And I'm like, awesome. And my first response is snark. And I would
Yeah.
love just be snarky. But I say, there's two different ways of approaching the world. One is to build something or encourage something to be built. And the other is to just be miserable and tear things down. Be the former.
Yeah.
Be the former. Make the world a better place. Don't make it a worse place. And it really changes lives because it changes. You remember that one person because one person said this made a difference. And I have
Mhm.
those people too. That this encouraged me to keep going or this encouraged me to do more.
So along the way doing YouTube, you started doing courses. What was your first course you ever made?
My first course I ever made was called C# application from start to finish. I've now rebranded it, call it Tournament Tracker. Um, but I was terrified to make it. But at the time, I was working full time, and I was doing consulting on the side, and I was trying to squeeze in time to do YouTube videos, which didn't happen very consistently or very often because I just didn't have time.
Yeah.
And so my thought was, hey, if I sold a course and people actually wanted to buy it and people are actually interested in what I have to teach, then I could replace some of my consulting income, which means I wouldn't have to do as much consulting. And if I didn't have to do as much consulting, I could spend more time creating YouTube content for free.
Hmm.
And so I pitched this to the audience and like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And but at the same time, I was terrified that no one would buy. It's the I threw a party and no one came.
Yeah.
I really thought that would happen. And so I also didn't really love the idea of making people pay for something because my goal was not make more money. My goal was to help people. And so I didn't want to just put something out there and I've kind of changed my philosophy a little bit on this, but I really don't want to just be like, hey, there's this hidden thing that only the elite can have. So what I ended up doing was I ended up giving away all the videos in the course for free. And I'm like, I was going to put on YouTube, but if you want the source code, if you want them all at once instead of dripped out on YouTube, if you want them with a certificate of completion, and if I did do one bonus video, I'm like, I'll do one bonus video on, I think, emailing that
Hmm.
I'll put in there in the paid course. So I gave everything away, but then charged $67 for the course and blew the doors off. Like I did not expect anyone to buy, and I had hundreds of people buying. So I'm like, oh, this works. And that was kind of the start of me thinking about creating content to replace first my consulting income, and then eventually, I never thought this would happen, but eventually my day job.
Yeah.
And then, from there, build an actual company out of it. But, even after I had that paid course, I still had that imposter syndrome of, well, I'm not good enough. I can't create content that's perfect. So I spent, I think, 2 years creating and throwing away what is now my C# master course. So I wanted to create something from the ground up. Like if you know nothing about C#, to start from zero and become a junior or mid-level C# developer, skill level wise.
Hmm.
And it was never good enough. It was never good enough. So I spent 2 years creating and throwing away content until finally I'm like, I just have to put something out the door. And I started putting stuff out the door and saying it's okay not to be perfect. And once I started to allow myself to not be perfect, I started creating more content. And now at the point where in 2019, I went full time with, just my course sales. And then in 2020, I hired my first employee. I'm now up to 4 employees that work on creating content. Well, I'm the only one that creates content right now, but the rest of them support that content creation.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. What type of support are they doing?
So my first hire, I hired my weaknesses, and that's been one of the things that as a human in general, you have to know what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses,
Hmm.
and if you're honest about that, you can do something about it. And so one of my weaknesses is I cannot design myself out of a paper bag. Like I just
Preach.
can't.
Yeah.
And so my brother-in-law, which I was not big on hiring family, but my brother-in-law is a really good designer. And so he was just doing my designs kind of as his side job. And I was paying him to do some designs for me. But when I needed more of that, and I'm like, hey, would you help me? And so he came on full time as my designer. He's also my marketing person. He's also my social media person. He wears a lot of hats. He does a lot of strategic planning with me as well. So I hired him. My first hire was March 1st of 2020, which was pandemic perfect.
Yeah. Perfect
So that
time.
was great timing. But then I hired a community manager. That's Tom. He does all the interactions with like people who've purchased courses that need help or that, you need a receipt or invoice or He works with vendors and he works with, a lot of different people. Plus he just interacts with the community in general. And then in 2021, I hired a very rookie web developer. I needed web development done. I can do it, but
Yeah.
that's not course development. And so again, there's an area where I'm like, I can take something off my plate and give it to somebody else. And so I kind of trained him up and taught him how to do web development. And so he does all of my website work now, which is awesome. So Dan will do the design for it, and then Noah does the actual work for it. And then, goodness, I forget when, was it September? No, it's been before that. I don't remember, but I hired a executive assistant to start offloading my work as well. So she's awesome. She's a person that will take something and just run with it. And so she viciously rips things away from me that I'm like, well, I could do that. She's like, no, you won't. No, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Takes it away from me, which is great because that's what I need is someone to take away the things that that others can do that I could do as well. Because what the real focus is, get me back into doing more and more software development, teaching,
Yeah.
and training. So that's where we're at right now. And we're going to probably grow again next year.
Are these all full-time employees?
All full-time employees.
I'm really interested in hearing the executive assistant because I've had a VA for years, and actually I'm right now on a low with my VA. I need to give her more work to do. But every person I know professionally who is running a business of some sort, always that's like the first step into achieving real success is getting that person to take stuff off your plate because yeah, I think you were touching on it. It's so easy for us to just want to have full control over everything, but having full control over everything means nothing gets done, or at least gets
Absolutely.
done in a manner that I would be happy with. And having those people to just take the things from you and doing a good job of it or a better job than I would do is the icing on the cake.
It
I
really is. I think that the thing that I've worked hard at as a business owner is doing the math.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people will get so caught up in the penny and forget the dollar.
Mhm.
And that's where, hiring somebody is expensive. And, a VA or a part-time VA or something like that can really be helpful when, you want to do something that's you're not ready for a full-time employee yet, but it
Yeah.
can help you get there. But really thinking through the idea of what is it that, if you want to talk strictly business, what is it that I do that no one else can do that brings in the money? And for me, that's teaching. Now, we're a little bit different as a company. We don't focus on dollars first.
Mhm.
We focus on helping people first, but that means what can I do to help people first? And that is building content. So really, that's the area I have to focus on, which means I have to give away everything else if I can.
Yeah.
And that means that I don't do things like, well, a simple one, book my trips. You know, why am I booking trips? Well, because I know exactly what I want. Okay, communicate that. Communicate that to somebody else and let them do it. Let it go, and it won't be perfect. The first few times, it won't be perfect. Something will be different or missed or not exactly way you do it. But you know what? Having somebody else do it, build them up, teach them how to do it right, have them go beyond what you could do. And at the same time, you're spending the time you need on the areas that are most important to your business.
Mhm. That is probably the best piece of advice in this entire conversation, I think. And we're going to make sure we do a YouTube short or a clip of that because I think more people need to hear that. It's really difficult when you're getting started. You don't have the money to pay for it, but eventually you'll get to the point where you are losing money by not doing it. So,
Absolutely.
well, Tim, we've been going for a while and we covered a lot of different things, but let's cover the last big item, and that's failure. And
Never done that.
well, we've been talking nothing but successes. But has it been anything you've started working on that you said, this isn't worth my time or energy. It's not producing the fruits that I needed to produce. And you just had to get rid of it?
There is a laundry list of things that I have done like that, and there is the things I did unintentionally like that. I remember there was a project I was building that was back in the early 2000s. I built an application that would help you capture and like bring with you code snippets. So you have a thumb drive, it'd have this little application on it that would have all your code snippets for working on a server, all the PowerShell scripts or whatever you needed to have. Um, and I just didn't quite wrap it up and finish it. And that was kind of accidental. Like I just didn't ever get that last 20% done, or it wasn't perfect. And so I just didn't finish it. And so some accidental things like that. But I think now for me, I look for that. I look for what things can I abandon? And, as a business, one of the things that we have to think through is not getting stuck in the sunk cost fallacy, not getting stuck in the, well, you've already spent 6 months on this. We need to keep going. No, throw that out, because if it's not working, it's not working.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we're pretty ruthless on is we meet once a month as a team in person. We're all remote right now, but we meet once a month in person, and we go through what are you working on, and where's the focus, and we may look at what we're doing and saying that's not working, throw it out. And it's hard because as a business owner, I can look at how much I'm paying in salary and how much time you spent on it and go, that's $50,000 right there that I'm throwing away. But I could throw $50,000 away, or I could throw $80,000 or $100,000 away. Which would I rather do?
Yeah.
Throw the 50 away. So what we have to do is make wise choices, but then, as far as moving forward, but then look at what are the things that we need to cut out that will make us better. And so we have cut projects that are good, but that take our time away from completing other projects that we want to do. There's a project right now that we have started working on a couple of times, and it would be one that would really help students. And it's a project we will do,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one that I think will revolutionize even the training industry for software development. But we've had to cut it at least twice now, where I've said, yeah, that's great. We don't have the time right now. Yeah, that's great. We don't have the energy to do that and this other thing. And this other thing's more important right now. So it's a good versus great, a better versus best. We've had to make that choice a lot.
I need some great advice, Tim. I think we're kind of getting to the end of our time together. If there was someone out there and they were saying, I want to be like Tim Corey when I grow up, what, any general advice for that person and getting started?
Um, well, I mean, I had a superpower. I had a great spouse. That was super helpful. But I think that, if you're looking to get into software development, if you're looking to get into training, looking to get into starting a business, I think that the most important things are, first of all, to be focused on what you're doing. Go deep into it. One of the things I see, I'll call them rookies,
Yeah.
do is they'll skip from thing to thing, and they'll start on something, learn all the flashy cool stuff, and then move on to the next flashy cool thing when things get hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell, C# developers, you're just learning C#, then don't learn Java. Don't learn JavaScript. Don't learn, stop it. Learn C# well. And even then, don't learn the UI. Learn the code. In my C# master course, we spend the first major section of the course in nothing but console applications. They're ugly, they're messy, they're simple. There's nothing flashy or cool about them. But what you do is you learn C# code well, and you establish that foundation, and you go deeper and deeper into the code itself, because it's not, when you look at a person's resume, you don't look for, worked on a flashy thing, number one, number two, number three, number four. It's how deep did you go? Like, can you actually fix real problems? Can you build real applications of this thing? Or have you seen how to do a hello world or a to-do app in 8 different types? Hmm. So, going deep into something, committing to something, and getting through that hard time. And that's kind of number two is if you're banging your head against a desk, you're probably in the right spot. Um, it's it's not the easy thing that is what will help you succeed. It's the pushing through the hard thing is what will get you there. And when you are trying to just do something that it's super easy, super easy, super easy, you feel like you're conquering the world. When you get to that spot where it's like, I've bogged down and now it's so hard, push through it. Because when you push through it, first of all, you're going to be a better, whatever it is, better business owner, better developer, better consultant. And you will have that real world skill and experience that others won't because they didn't push through. And that's what kind of separates people. It's the filter.
You work through those hard problems. They make such good stories for
They
when
did.
you're sitting around the table or the bar or whatever with other developers and go, man, let me tell you about this problem I've been working on. And that camaraderie just from working on hard problems. And it's also nice where you're talking through a hard problem with someone and they go, let me give you a little bit of advice because I think I've done something similar to this. And it makes your whole life easier.
Yep.
Tim, anything to promote?
Just go to YouTube and find the free content that I have there. Just go to youtube.com/I am Tim Corey, or just Google I am Tim Corey. You'll find me. But I got a ton of free content to help developers, learn software development, get better at software development, specifically C# and the things around it, Git, SQL, and all the rest. Yeah, try it out there.
Fantastic. All right. With that, Tim, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. And we'll see everyone next week on the next episode of the Multithreaded Income Podcast. Take care.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Multithreaded Income Podcast. I really hope that this podcast has been useful for you. If it has, please take a moment to leave a review wherever you get your podcast from. And don't forget, the conversation doesn't stop here. Join us on our Discord at mti.to/Discord. I've been your host, Kevin Griffin, and we'll see you next week. Cha-ching!